Hey there folks, Doc Pepper here, and I'm going to talk about something that I like to call the Daniel Bryan paradox. You see, let's say you're a television writer, and let's say you want to write good television. Well, to do that you have to write compelling, well-rounded characters. That includes your protagonist, your side characters, and yes, your villains. Your antagonists have to be as interesting and well-written as well as well-performed as any other character in your story. Now, that works for your average thing of television. I'm a big Lost fan, or was when it was on, at the very least, and I couldn't get enough of Benjamin Linus. I watched every episode of Lost hoping to see what Ben Linus would do next. Does that mean I liked the character and thought he was a good guy? No. Was I cheering for him to win? No. But I was cheering to see more of him at home. And see, that's not a problem for regular television. However, professional wrestling has this tricky little thing called the live audience. And the live audience is, well, as much a part of the show as anything else. And because of that, you have to really kind of write around the live audience. Now, if you're writing like any regular television series, you write your villains well-rounded and interesting. And the people who perform as your villains, heels in the professional wrestling world, are going to be well-rounded and interesting too. And when you do that, unfortunately, the crowd begins to like them, in the same way that I liked watching Ben Linus. The more an audience likes a character, a heel, the more they're going to cheer that character. And that makes a big problem because they can no longer be a villain. We saw this with Randy Orton as a primary example. He was so good at playing the serial killer gimmick that people cheered when he came out. Not necessarily saying that they liked watching, associated themselves with his goals or his motivations, or felt that he was a likable character, but they enjoyed watching him because he was interesting. So they would cheer when he came out. And thus they had to, by force of nature, turn him face. And unfortunately, when that happened, a lot of the interest about his character was taken away because he's an interesting villain. Now, this is a real big problem for modern wrestling because you can't write compelling, interesting villains without suddenly making them fan favorites and thus getting cheers from the live audience. Daniel Bryan was a good heel. I'm not going to say he's the greatest heel. I thought the AJ storyline was okay, but he's a compelling enough and interesting guy that you kind of just followed him no matter what. He was a good wrestler, good on the mic, and his yes gimmick was damn hilarious. Following WrestleMania, they had to turn him face because people enjoyed watching him so much that they just wanted to cheer him. If Lost were somehow a live television show, just roll with me on this, the character of Benjamin Linus couldn't exist. It would be impossible. Because then, if the live audience was there on the island, somehow, just keep rolling, the crowd would start cheering for him because, just as I did at home, I cheered for him just to see him on screen. The other half of this problematic coin is that the only heels that can still remain getting heat, well, are poorly written and uninteresting. You see, what happens is that if you're a smart mark and you're going to a wrestling show and somebody comes out who's uninteresting, boring, whatever, you're going to boo them because you just don't want to see them. Not because you think that they're good at being a bad guy, but just because you're like, fuck, Lord Tensai, Or, as I noted in the latest episode of No Holds Barred, John Laurinaitis, prior to WrestleMania, has been a terrible heel. One of the worst heel general managers of all time. But he's getting so much heat, and the reason is only because he's so bad at being on television. People are booing him because he's bad on television. Now, if you're a writer in the WWE and you're facing this terrible problem of how do I make people how do I make characters that people will boo? How do I make heels? You can't write them well. So, especially given the time crunch that the WWE puts writers under, you just kind of put in a placeholder. You just kind of go, well, you know, this John Laurinaitis guy, he's getting some heat. People are booing him, so you know what, let's just put him on more television until I can figure out how to solve this Rubik's Cube of a problem. Unfortunately, we've had a lot of people falling into that category of getting heat that isn't really heat for how interesting or compelling the villain is, but instead, they're getting heat because of people just want them off their television screen. To make a long story short, the modern way that live audiences look at wrestling precludes a lot of greats from wrestling history. We cannot, given the modern environment, have a Ted DiBiase. We cannot have a Mr. Perfect. It's impossible, because the crowd would eventually start cheering for them. Come on, if Ted DiBiase were to come out today, you know the crowd would start to like him. Because, well, he's just that damn good. So here's my solution to the Daniel Bryan paradox, and consequently the John Laurinaitis conundrum. Patent pending. Here's my solution to both of these problems. And it's the solution that I've been following when I go to wrestling shows, but I want to share with you guys, and hopefully a few of you out there will adopt the same practice. I do what is expected of me. I join the show. That doesn't mean that I completely disregard my own opinions, but what it does mean is, for example, if Dolph Ziggler were to come out, a wrestler who I greatly admire, I think is very talented, and I enjoy watching. If he were to come out, I do not cheer him. I do not cheer Dolph Ziggler at a live show. I boo him. I boo the fuck out of him. And I boo him because that's the audience reaction that the writers need, that's the audience reaction that the bookers need, and that's the audience reaction that Dolph Ziggler needs. Dolph is trying to make you boo him. He wants you to, and if he's doing his job well, that's the reaction he wants. The other half of that, though, is that if there's somebody that comes out that you just don't want to see, that you're just so frustrated with because they're not good on the mic, they're not good in the ring, their character isn't interesting, whatever. Lord Tensai, whatever. If one of those guys comes out, don't cheer them, obviously. Don't boo them. Just stay silent. Because that's sending a real message. If John Laurinaitis comes out and you boo him because you want him off your TV, if you don't want to see him, guess what? You're feeding into the problem. And you're feeding into the problem of boring, bland, uninteresting villains and heels. And you're contributing, consequently, to the secondary problem of interesting heels suddenly having to become face. I'm going to ask everyone who watched this video to please, the next time you go to a wrestling show, join in on the fun, take part in what you're expected to do, and boo heels that you like, and stay silent when somebody comes on that you just can't stand. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about this idea, and if you think that the Daniel Bryan paradox is really a problem. Don't forget, leave some comments down below sharing your thoughts, and don't forget to share this if you agree with the message here and you feel that heels need to go back to being heels again. Until next time, folks, I'm Doc Pepper, and, well, thanks for watching.